All right, well, hello and welcome to this month's Lunch and Learn. We are going to be talking about gut health and immunity. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Allison Knight and I'm your on-site health coach. All right, so the gut. Did you know that your gut is populated by bacteria and that we actually have more bacteria and are not our own DNA than our own DNA? So bacteria have their own DNA. It's not the same as ours. Not only do these bacteria help with digestion, which obviously makes sense, but there is an enormous amount of interaction between that bacteria in our gut and our immune system. This is kind of the up and coming topic. You've probably heard more about the microbiome and microbiota, and that's something we probably didn't hear about 5 years ago or so. So the link, taking care of your gastrointestinal health means that you're supporting your immune function. Over 70% of your immune system is actually located in the gut, meaning that bacteria that is not our DNA is really what's interacting with that and helping or hurting your immune system. So what is the microbiome? Basically, it consists of trillions of microorganisms of thousands of different species that include bacteria, fungi, parasites, and viruses. So it's a few different types. And it's actually labeled as a supporting organ because it's key in promoting proper daily function of our body and our immune system. It's individualized. Everyone has a unique microbiome that's determined by your DNA when you're a fetus or a little cell. And then your first exposure to microorganisms is at birth. So depending on whether you were born through the birth canal or cesarean, whether you are breastfed or bottle fed, all of those have an impact on what your microbiome will be today. So what your mother does or how you were born impacts how you turned out today with your microbiome. And it's dependent on your mother's microbiome, obviously. If you are born through the birth canal, then it's the internal microorganisms. If you're born through cesarean, those babies get the skin bacteria instead, the skin microbiome. So they have a different microbiome. And then once that's happened, then environmental factors and your diet can further change your microbiome, and that can be either for good or for bad. So helpful or harmful? A healthy body actually does contain both pathogenic and symbiotic microbiotic peacefully. So typically they're living in harmony, everything's good. But when one starts to get out of the balance and it's disrupted by an infectious illness, overuse of antibiotics, which the United States is notorious for, and diets, that can lead to your susceptibility to disease, a weakened immune system, etc. So then we have to talk about digestion in the microbiome. So simple sugars, these are going to be your table sugars, lactose, refined carbohydrates, those types of things are easily absorbed in our upper small intestine. So that's where we typically grab nutrients out and absorb them. Complex carbohydrates on the flip side, so this is going to be starches and fibers, typically travel down to the lower intestine. So they're either not broken down at all and simply just fuel a healthy digestion system. But if they are, then they're broken down in the large intestine where the microbiota breaks them down with their digestive enzymes. So fiber in itself is actually food for that bacteria in our microbiome. A high fiber diet then affects the type, the composition, and the number of microbiota that we have. And there are two types of fiber. There's the soluble fiber and the insoluble fiber. The insoluble fiber is obviously things that contain like a hull, like the almonds, like the kernel of a corn, things that have more dense coatings that we don't digest at all. And then soluble fiber we can digest to an extent. It's only broken down in the microbiota in the colon again. And when this happens, short chain fatty acids are created. And these are another like up and coming topic that helps promote our health, wellness, and our immune system. And when these are created, they're created through a fermentation process. And that fermentation lowers the pH in our large intestine, which helps limit the growth of certain harmful bacteria. So you want that fermentation to occur because you want to prevent the growth of bad bacteria in our gut. These fibers are sometimes called prebiotics. We've heard of probiotics. Prebiotics is the kind of the new term. And they're called prebiotics because they are probiotic foods. So probiotics are the bacteria themselves, and prebiotics are the food that fuel them, which is typically that fiber, including inulin, resistant starches, gums, pectins, and fructooligosaccharides. That'll be a quiz, pop quiz. These are found in the raw forms of garlic, onions, leeks, kind of the allicins group, asparagus, bananas, seaweed, and some other types of food. But in general, whole plant foods are going to be a good source of fiber and therefore a good source of prebiotics for your probiotics. We also have soybeans on here, some types of bread, artichokes. I think it's Jerusalem artichokes specifically. I don't know the difference, but so probiotics come from foods that contain that bacteria or that microbiota, or they come from a supplement that contains the live bacteria. They seem to be found to be most beneficial at either age spectrum, end of the spectrum. So when you're a child or an infant, and when you're older. Also, if you have a disrupted microbiome because of excessive antibiotic use, it's beneficial to repopulate them. Generally, they say if someone's healthy, they aren't probably as effective. But when you think about it, only like 19% of Americans are metabolically healthy. So even though they say they're not beneficial for people who are healthy, most people are not considered healthy. And so therefore a probiotic is healthy for that person. A couple different types here that you've probably heard of just before. Lactobacillus is probably the most popular. A lot of probiotics contain that. We got Lactococcus, Streptococcus thermophilus, Bifidobacterium. Those ones I haven't heard of as much, but Lactobacillus is usually like the main one that's found in a probiotic. Now, the thing to remember about supplements is that they are not regulated by the FDA. So this means that there's no guarantee in the purity, the ingredients, the amount of the bacteria, or whether or not the bacteria is live when it's in the supplement form. So you want to make sure that you find a good reputable source. I plug standard process here, but whatever, but look and make sure that where you're getting your supplement from is a reputable source that actually contains what it says it contains, because a lot of those ones on the shelves at Walgreens or Walmart don't necessarily contain what they say they contain. In fact, they do studies on not just probiotics, but a lot of supplements, and a lot of them don't contain anything that they state that they do. So I always like to give that warning. As far as food sources, fermented foods are going to be your biggest source of probiotics because, again, they create that fermentation. So kefir, which I don't know if you've heard of kefir before, it's kind of like a drinkable yogurt. It's generally a fermented dairy product, but you can get it fermented like almond. You can get like fermented almond milk or soy milk or whatever too. Pickled vegetables, kombucha, which is just fermented tea. Kimchi, which is fermented cabbage. Miso, which is fermented soybean paste. So if you like Asian cuisine, a lot of times they use miso for like salmon. Sauerkraut, obviously, which would be great on a Reuben for tomorrow, even though Reubens are not Irish, they're German. And tempeh, which is similar to tofu, but it is made from soybeans that have been fermented. So that's the difference between tempeh and tofu. Tofu is made from soybeans that have not been fermented. So a lot of Asian culture, they obviously have a very healthy diet and a very healthy gut because they eat a lot of these foods. So what is the link between the gut and our immune health then? So again, the microbiota interacts with our immune system and it stimulates that immune system. It turns it on or it turns it off. And a healthy microbiome provides protection against pathogens and it helps prevent the growth of that bad bacteria. Anaerobic bacteria like Streptococcus, Bifidobacterium, Lactobacillus, and Clostridium, okay, so some of the ones I mentioned before actually prevent the overgrowth of the harmful bacteria. So that's why that Lactobacillus is usually the most commonly found bacteria or microbiota in a probiotic. The reason why these are good to have and how they prevent the overgrowth of harmful bacteria is that they actually compete for the resources and the food, the prebiotics, And they also compete for the attachment sites on the mucous membrane. So if the bad bacteria can't attach because the good bacteria overpopulates it, they reach the sites first and prevent the bad bacteria from attaching. And that's a major site of our immune activity and function. So allergies, autoimmune, and inflammatory disorders are all a result of misdirected immune response. And who has, a peanut allergy or has an autoimmune disease where their body, like lupus, their body is attacking their own body, it's actually a misdirected response where we start attacking ourselves. The standard American diet, or the SAD diet, the acronym, which is an accurate depiction of our diet in the United States, as well as excess antibiotic use, results in that altered microbiota composition. So again, you might have more bad than good. You might have a different composition than you should. And that can lead to a harmful interaction or a dyssymbiosis instead of that symbiotic, synergistic reaction that we're looking for between the pathogenic and the good bacteria. So how can you improve your gut health then? So eating a diverse range of foods. I mean, this is pretty good advice across the board. The more types of foods you eat, the more nutrients you're going to get. If we consistently eat the same food over and over again, even if it's healthy, well, we're only getting the vitamins and phytonutrients and minerals found in that food. So trying to eat a variety of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and lean meats and dairy products are going to ensure that you're getting all of the nutrients that you need from all the different types of foods. Eat more fiber and prebiotics. Again, prebiotics are generally the name that fiber is called. 97% of Americans do not get enough fiber. The recommendation is 25 grams a day for women, minimum, and 38 grams a day for men. And 97% of Americans usually get maybe 15 to 16 grams a day. So eating more whole grain foods, less refined carbohydrates, less white bread, like white pasta, white rice, more brown rice, whole wheat bread, oatmeal, barley, rye, all of those are whole grains. Eat fermented foods. So we went through that list of foods as well, trying to incorporate those into your day, maybe make a kefir smoothie in the morning to get those probiotics in. Limit artificial sweeteners. So they've actually found the link between artificial sweetener and your gut health, aside from any other things that they might talk about it actually does seem to increase our insulin sensitivity, which then raises your blood sugar slightly. So even though it's not sugar, and people on diabetes are generally recommended to use artificial sweeteners, it can have the opposite effect as well. And it seems to be that artificial sweetener actually accelerates or promotes the growth of certain bad, harmful microbiota as well. On the flip side, though, limiting simple sugars is also important. So again, candy bars, lactose, those types of things, because that can also have the same effect. It can also promote the growth of bad bacteria. So I'm not saying, obviously I didn't say no, because I don't believe in no, but trying to just pay attention. And maybe if you're eating, 50 grams of sugar a day, look at scaling it back a little bit, because for the American Heart Association recommends less than 25 grams a day for women and less than 38 grams a day for men. So it's the same numbers as fiber. So we need to get 25 grams and 38 grams of fiber, and we need to get less than 25 grams and 38 grams of added sugars during the day. And limiting red meat. And now this is probably not going to be what you think it is. Does anyone want to take a guess at why we should be limiting red meat? And actually, I would say limiting meat or watching your meat consumption in general.
You're a lifetime member of PETA?
No. Nope.
Because it rots in your gut and promotes anaerobic respiration.
So the number one use of antibiotics in our country is actually in commercial meat production. We give the animals the antibiotics to prevent infection. But so even if we're not getting prescribed antibiotics, we're still getting a lot of antibiotics from the meat that we eat.
That's why you gotta kill it before you can grill it.
And so trying to get it, so hunting or getting it from, getting it from a local farm where you know that they're not using as many antibiotics. Grass-fed, the open pasture, those types of things. Typically, you want to look for things that are grass-fed or grass-finished.
Do they
That
do
means
that with poultry and things like that, or is it just the red meat?
they do it with poultry as well too. So this specifically said red meat, but now that I'm thinking about it, it's meat in general. They definitely do it with chicken as well. So again, it's not saying don't eat it at all, but if you can find some more reputable sources that are limiting the use of antibiotics, it's going to be a better alternative. Just because, again, I think it's 85% of the antibiotics that are prescribed or used in this country. I mean, we overprescribe them, but actually go into commercial meat farms. So that's something to think about. Again, avoiding antibiotics as much as possible. Obviously, if it's a serious infection and you need an antibiotic, you should be taking the antibiotic. But sometimes they prescribe antibiotics and they're not necessary. I had a root canal a couple of years ago and they prescribed me. They're like, you don't have an infection now, but we're going to prescribe you an antibiotic just in case. Avoiding the antibiotics if you don't absolutely need them. If you don't currently have an infection, that's not going away. Sticking to a sleep schedule, an erratic or not consistent sleep schedule can also disrupt your microbiome. They like a good night's sleep. And then moving more and stretching less. So they've actually found people who are more physically active. And again, I say physically active, not just exercise, just people who are moving more throughout the day tend to have healthier microbiome than those who are sedentary. And then stressing less, going along with that sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're stressing more. Your microbiome also does not like to be stressed out. So engaging in some stress management, and that might be moving more. Here are some resources. But it's a very up and coming topic. We're going to have more and more information on this, on how to support your gut health. But basically, they found gut health and immunity, gut health and disease, gut health and diabetes. Basically, everything is tracing back to our microbiome and making sure that we're having healthy bacteria in our body and that it's not overpopulated by harmful bacteria, because that's what's causing a lot of our disease in the United States. And a lot of that's fueled by diet. But the specific thing is that the diet is fueling those bacteria. Any other questions? All right. Well, if you're interested in making a healthy behavior change or looking for accountability, you know where to find me. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And next month we have another Lunch and Learn that I don't remember the topic on right now, but we have one. I'm just going to be honest on something. Exercise, maybe, meal planning, something like that. Some fun health topic.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Thank you.